Founding Partner and Chief Engineer at Combilift, winner of the Ernest Young Entrepreneur of the Year 2001, and Combilift exports globally from Monaghan, so no better person to speak on the topic. Okay, Martin, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I was going to say, well, the weather outside is probably nothing better we could be doing anyway, so hopefully, and I appreciate the Monaghan Enterprise Board offering the opportunity for myself to express a few words on exporting, and hopefully if every one of you can pick 1 or 2 points from it, at least it's of some value. I know most of you, well, in the Monaghan area are familiar, but just I'll go through a couple of slides. Can we turn down the lights maybe, or maybe that's too dark? We're Combilift, we're based in the original Monaghan poultry products. We're based here in Monaghan town. It's a privately owned business. Myself and Robert Moffat founded the company 14 years ago. I worked as an engineer in Moffat Engineering prior, where we manufactured the Moffat truck mounted forklift. And today Combilift, well, we set up 14 years ago. We're employing 250 people here in Monaghan in the manufacturing site, plus another 50 people will be based abroad. And as Breege mentioned earlier, export is really our main business. 99% of what we produce today is shipped out of Ireland. In terms of from we started in 1998, we produced 18 trucks in 1998, and of the 18, 17 of them we exported out of the country. So we pretty much set our business up as an export business from day one. Now, manufacturing forklift trucks, we really didn't have an option because the home market for forklift trucks is quite limited, so at least it meant that we had to focus on export, otherwise it wouldn't be worth the investment. So that probably got us to focus on export from day one. And out of the 17 that we shipped out, we actually found in that first year, and maybe through a few of the slides I can mention it, but we found it easier doing business abroad than in Ireland. To get orders in Ireland that first year or two was a lot tougher than getting orders in Norway or in Belgium or in the UK. And the main reason I think for that was, for an Irish company to buy an Irish product, the Irish company, it'll either be in Monaghan in another county, is going to say, well, where can I see one working? We didn't have any to show. Therefore, they had doubt initially from the start. While when I would visit a customer in Norway, they actually felt Combilift was quite a sizable company, because they felt, well, if you're exporting to Norway, you must be building quite a few trucks for other markets. So they didn't even ask to come to Ireland to see one. So we found it easier to get kicked off by actually going into an export market. This is where we're manufacturing. And today, that slide's probably not updated, we're probably exporting to about 60 plus markets worldwide today. I'll just skip through because we'll go to the main points. But in terms of our products, we have 5 core products in the range. A lot of our products are designed space-saving handling equipment. We don't manufacture regular forklift trucks. There's so many producers of regular forklift trucks. There's like Toyota, Nissan, Mitsubishi. So regular forklift trucks is like the car industry. It's just so competitive, so volume-based. So we focused on, the unique selling point was that we could save our customers space. We could work indoor and outdoor. And all the products we've developed are very much based around space-saving equipment. And probably one of the reasons why it allowed us to get started a lot easier, the main volume manufacturers want to focus on high volume, while for us we wanted to find a niche that at least we could become dominant in. I think that's key. If you're deciding to export any product, you need to be in a niche market. You know, if you're in a volume type business or in a volume type product, it's very hard to compete globally from the start unless you have some unique selling point. Even though I mentioned, because it's always easy saying we export to 50, 60 markets, but the reality is still today, 50% of our business comes from 4 key markets. That's the United States, the UK, sorry, the slide mightn't show it correctly, but the United States 15%, UK 15%, Germany's 10%, and France is 10%. So even though we're exporting to a lot of other countries, there's still 4 markets that are 50% of our business. We have distribution right across all of Europe, including Eastern Europe into Russia now, and we distribute our product through forklift dealers. So it's like a car dealership, we distribute our product through forklift dealerships. I think the one other thing, and we made a mistake, you know, I'm sure everyone, you make mistakes early on, but when we started export, for example, into the United States, day one, we found it easier. We actually appointed an importer for the US. So there was a company came to us saying, we want to sell your product in the US. So we appointed them as our US importer. And it's a single company, and they were our distributor for about 2 years. We weren't really getting the results we wanted because we were relying on one importer to do everything for us. But shortly after that, we changed. We broke the US market into segments, and that's what we do now in our bigger markets. For example, in Germany, we have 14 or 15 dealers in Germany. We don't have one dealer in Germany. Because what we find, at least if we have 14 or 15 dealers, if there's 4 or 5 of these dealers that are not performing, at least the other 10 are performing for you. So I think it's often easier just to appoint a dealer for one market and you think if that market's solved. But the reality is you're better breaking it into segments. Now, you take, for example, Ireland as a market that we're familiar with. It's a decent size. For any distributor, I often think if you break market segments worldwide into sections like Ireland, so if you take Germany, we've broken into 10 or 14, it's probably broken into 10 or 14 Ireland equivalents. And I think that's the important thing. It gives you more opportunity of growing in the bigger markets. It is a bit tougher to start with, but the advantage of doing it like this, when I go to Germany at the start, I could find a small distributor, for example, in Hanover that was interested. It was much better to work with that small distributor to get started rather than trying to look for an importer to do all of Germany. So you may start off slower, but in the long run it's a lot better breaking the bigger markets into segments. In terms of exporting, of course, I know people often say, well, how do you deal with the language situation? We had a very simple philosophy early on. We only appoint distributors that speak English. And what I mean by that is, just to make it simple, even for example in France or in the early markets, Belgium, Norway, all our distributors, at least the owners of the company or the main key managers in the business spoke English. So it meant that daily I could lift the phone and call them and speak to the relevant person. While even as of today we have 250 people on site, we do not have any language speaking person in our plant. Even though we're exporting to all these markets across Europe, we don't have a French speaking person, we don't have a Spanish speaking, we've no language speaking people in the plant. So it means it's a cost saving from day one if you don't have to look at that. But in terms of how we've further developed the markets, we actually have now people based in the countries. So for example in Germany, we have 3 salespeople based in Germany. Of course they're native Germans that speak German. But we made the decision not to have language speaking people at the plant, because even if you have someone that speaks the language of the plant, they're going to more act as an interpreter for me or some of our people to translate back to the market. While you're a lot better if you go to I'll say the cost or the investment of hiring a person who speaks the local language, have them based in the market and you get a lot better return on it. In terms of transporting, maybe this slide probably shows us, because of the products we make, the forklift trucks are quite sizable. In the development of our products, because export was from day one, we developed our products that they'd be easy to export. So even though if you see a Combilift today, it's a certain dimension. Now it's designed in a certain format for handling the material, but it's also designed in a certain format that allows us to ship it by container to any country around the world. And I think that's important, is particularly if anyone is in bigger manufacturing, making the product to do the job is one thing, but making it that you can ship it from A to B easy and cost effective is going to be key to competing, particularly in export markets. The other thing in terms of developing the product, we developed it to meet international regulations from day one. So even though we're manufacturing here in Europe, we designed our products to meet US regulations, Australian regulations. And that little bit of investment early on means you don't have to redesign the product later on should you decide to enter a new market. As I probably mentioned earlier, is we focused on very much a niche export market. And our early products, the Combilift, is designed as a forklift truck that can go forward and back like a regular forklift and go left and right. So the niche we focused on is companies handling long material. So that can be companies handling steel, timber, plastic, aluminium, so anything that's long load. And the big players, the big Toyota forklift manufacturers, Mitsubishi, Nissan, they never really focus very much on that business because it's a lot smaller volume. And that probably gives us a chance to get started. The other thing, and I've often said it previously, is the people we have in Monaghan, it's for an export company, it's our can-do attitude. So it doesn't matter from what country someone comes into our plant, they all admire the can-do attitude we have, our employees in Monaghan. So it doesn't matter where it's someone on the factory floor putting together the simplest component to say, well, this individual asked me, did they need any help? You know, so the can-do attitude goes down really well to anyone that we take in from abroad. The other thing, of course, and I know it's probably everyone thinks of it, but the most cost-effective marketing you can have is to have a happy customer. In fact, we have this saying now in Combilift is every customer should be a referral customer. It doesn't matter if it's the most difficult customer you find in the world, you need to find a way to make them a referral customer. Because if customers are not referrals, you don't have many people that are going to talk to you. Often say someone that's negative might speak to 10 people, someone that's positive will probably only speak to one person. And you know, I can think of several examples. Like even I had one customer in the UK called Travis Perkins. They're a large building material distributor. They had a breakdown on a Combilift at, like, I think it was 4 o'clock on a Friday evening, and it was the engine, the sump of the engine started to leak oil. But Saturday morning we got an engineer on a plane across with the sump to get the truck up and going. So it was up and running by whatever lunchtime on Saturday. They wouldn't have got that service from a local UK company. So even that small, okay, it might be a cost, it might have cost, I don't know, whatever at the time, maybe 500 or 1,000 euro of a cost just to solve that simple problem. But that customer remembered, and they become a referral. So small investments, particularly in the early stage of any market or customers, makes a big difference. The other thing with the products, in the forklift business, like probably car, automotive, a lot of forklift trucks are becoming more electronics. You know, to repair a car nowadays, a local mechanic can't do it. You need a laptop computer, you need all these electronics. But we took the philosophy, if we want to sell our product in the United States and South America, and I mean example in places like the Canary Islands, Barbados, Antigua, all these places that have Combilifts, we decided to keep it simple. And a regular forklift mechanic, or I'll call it a basic car mechanic, without a laptop computer can still repair a Combilift anywhere in the world. So our German competitors, they go the opposite. Maybe they add a lot of electronics, but we took the philosophy to make it, to be successful in export, if you keep it simple, it makes the product more reliable, the local customer can repair it faster, and of course if that customer can repair it faster, they're a referral for you as well. The one thing you'll probably find, no matter what product or service, even though when you design a product for here, for the Irish market, you might think the same benefits will come across in other markets, but even for us, in the European market, our key selling benefit is the space saving of what we produce. But when we went to the US market 12 years ago, a lot of companies in the US didn't care so much about the space. You know, outside the big cities, land is not that expensive. So for example, in a lumber yard, as they call it, timber yard, they have acres of space. But what was critical in the US is handling that long material more safely was more important to them. So it's trying to find an angle to your product or service that makes them tick. And I think the thing is, don't assume that what sells in one market, the reason it sells in one market may not be the reason it'll sell in another market. And then when we went to Scandinavia, Canada for example, the ability of our product to work indoor and outdoor. And as I mentioned earlier, initially only appointed English dealers. That's not maybe 100% true now, because we have German-speaking people in Germany, so we do have some of our dealers that don't speak English. But in the early years, it was only English dealers that, particularly the management of the company, spoke English. We have one market which was we established back in 13 years ago, was in France, and we done a joint venture with our French distributor. From my experience within Moffat in the past, we found it's very difficult to sell to a French customer. You know, with a non-French product. Very much they want to buy French products if they can, or services. So we made the decision to do a joint venture between our French distributor and us called Combilift. So the French customer today still believe the product, well, not them all, but a lot of the customers in France believe the product is actually made in France. And the French market still accounts for about 10% of our business. It's one of the only large markets where we have a single distributor now. You know, in Germany we've it broke down, in the UK, in America. So France, we still work with one large distributor. And there's a lot of merits in this in terms of it gets you off the ground much faster. The negative of this, doing a joint venture with a French distributor like that, is if someday we fall out with that distributor for any reason, in reality it nearly means we're back to scratch in that market, because a lot of the customers think it's a French product. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to lose the market, but that's the negative of doing a joint venture like that. Then you become so reliant where you have to work as a partnership for your own benefit going forward. So I'm not saying I'd recommend that worldwide, but particularly in France it's worked very well for us. In terms of, you know, our products, to make them innovative takes a lot of investment in research and development. We currently invest about 9% of our turnover annually in R&D, and that means not only coming up with new products, but customizing our products to suit particular customer needs. But the other thing that I think is very relevant to developing any product or service is linking your R&D very closely with the sales and marketing. Not just sitting in a room coming up with what you think is the best product or the best service, is communicating with customers. And I don't mean not just maybe a customer in Ireland, but bringing customers in from other markets, so get other customers' feedback early on. And the other advantage of bringing customers into your facility is, I can think of one example, a company in the US called Weyerhaeuser. They're a very large timber distributor. They had a particular requirement that they would have liked on the Combilift, but we took in a number of their key people. We designed the product particularly around their needs. So whenever we had the product designed, they'd really no option only buy our product. So they actually went and they bought 110 or 120 trucks from us, because in reality it became like their product. So if you can use a customer in your design stage early on, they'll become loyal to you. And you automatically get the order. The price doesn't even become a discussion. You've solved their problem, and that's what's important. Our products are all designed to meet the requirements for the US, Europe, Australia, the different regulations. In getting the product to market, you want to make it as easy as possible for the buyer on the other side to decide to buy it. So for example, in the US, we will sell our product in US dollars. We will actually sell it in US dollars delivered to their doorstep. So Combilift, we take care of all the freight costs, we take care of the customs clearance, we take care of the inland freight. We will give them a delivered price in US dollars on their doorstep. And what that means is that customer out there knows exactly what it's going to cost them. While if we quoted them in euro, for example, a company I use in Los Angeles, for example, if we quote them in euro, a customer's not going to buy the day you quote them, so they're thinking, well, what's it going to cost them in US dollars? So they convert it to US dollars. Then they have to start to worry about, how do we get it transported? Do we have a custom broker to clear it? What's going to happen if the currency fluctuates in the next 4 months before I get the product? So you create all these doubts in the customer's mind. While if we can deliver it to their doorstep in their currency, that's another concern out of their mind. So then you're down to focusing on why they should buy your product, so you don't have to worry about price. The price discussion is fixed. They know exactly what's going to cost them. The other advantage of quoting it in the local currency, when I'm saying a user in Los Angeles, but most of our products are sold through dealers. And the advantage of having it in US dollars is our US dealers, for example, they'll know what it's going to cost them, so they put their margin on it so that they know what it. But not only do we sell it to the dealers, we actually produce a recommended retail price list for the US. So we will say the Combilift price in the US is going to be X amount of US dollars. You as a dealer will get 10% discount or 15%, whatever the discount's going to be. And it means that we're managing the cost right across the marketplace. Because what you find with particularly in dealers early on, if they like your product or service, they'll put a very high margin on it. And of course, they're happy with a high margin. They're maybe happier to sell lower volume and make more profit. But the reality is we want more volume, and it doesn't matter what business you're in. So if you can try and manage what discount the dealers are going to get. And the other advantage of selling it in the local currency, you don't want a distributor or a dealer putting a buffer on it for currency fluctuation. So if your product costs €1,000 and they convert it today, it's maybe $1,300, they might say in their mind, oh, well, we better put in $1,400 cost, because from their mind is they're going to cover themselves. So it means you cut out the need for them inflating the price to protect themselves. The negative, of course, we're taking the fluctuation, but we can actually change the price over time. So if we find the currency is going to give us, we bring the pricing up. The other, just some of the reasons to export, less reliant on a single market. And the other thing, to deal with multinational companies, they want to deal with suppliers that can service the product nationally or globally as well. So if I just take, for example, I see Q here from Kingspan. And Kingspan, for example, that have plants in a lot of markets around the world, if they buy a Combilift in one market like here, if they want to buy it in other markets, they want to deal with a supplier that is supporting other markets. But that takes time, and in fact a lot of our larger customers have brought us to new markets. And a good example of that might be there's a company called Schuko. They make window profile. They said that they wanted a Combilift for their plant in Dubai. We didn't have a dealer in Dubai, but the reality is I flew to Dubai, found a dealer. I didn't have to find a customer because I automatically had a customer. And the dealer, it was easier to find a dealer because I could say to a dealer in Dubai, I have a customer who wants a product. So following your customers is a great, cheap, cost-effective way of getting into new markets. So I think Bree says my time's up there. And
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Martin. Now is your opportunity, really. We want to leave enough time, really, for questions and answers. So over to the floor, really, and any questions you'd like to ask.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Martin. Were you involved in the lift business before you set this company up? Or?
I worked as a design engineer in Moffat Engineering. So I was like research and development manager, but I did quite a bit of travelling to other markets while we were developing the Moffat mounting product. So.
And you just decided lifts was the way to.
Well, I started Moffat Engineering at 17, so forklifts is the only thing I know.
Oh, right.
I know nothing else. I went straight out of school in the fork,
Right.
so
Yeah, okay.
I'm sort of blinkered on forklift trucks.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah. And then in 97, Moffat was sold out to a public company, so we set up Combilift in 98 then.
Do you use agents anywhere worldwide rather than distributor models?
You know what?
And also, just to add to that, from a risk-reward point of view, how would that work for you?
You know what? Of all the time I've been selling products, can you give me your difference and explanation between an agent and a distributor? How you?
Distributor is basically they're investing in the product to bring it onto the market.
Okay.
They've got some product sitting there.
Okay.
An agent goes and sells in for you, and you don't pay them until they've actually you've delivered and got the product paid for.
Okay. So when you're saying with an agent, you're
position.
actually invoicing the user and you're paying them a commission after, are you?
You be invoicing your customers directly,
exactly.
and your agent gets paid the commission afterwards.
Yeah. So I might call, we might call it a consultant in the market or an agent. Yeah. We do use some agents, but because our product is a forklift truck, it needs local service. We generally work through forklift distributors that will invest in spare parts to support the product. But in some of the new markets early on, we'd use contacts or maybe agents or consultants and pay a commission afterwards. Mm-hmm. But particularly in some of the newer developing countries, like for example, even in India, where you're never sure, okay, how are you going to get paid for the product, even though we use letter of credit. We will invoice a lot of the users directly in India and then pay our distributor in India the commission. Because we don't want to be giving the distributor in India credit on a full forklift truck in the early stage. So we probably use that model early on, and it develops more as a distributor later. So.
Yeah. The service, I suppose, is
it's a big key.
Do you find it's difficult to keep your distributors happy, and how much effort do you need to put into keeping the relationship alive and giving those guys what they need?
you know what, it's always a challenge. It doesn't matter how long you have a distributor in the market, it's always hard to keep them motivated. Like, for example, what I've probably realised over the years, we put a lot more focus on the US market this year than we did in the last 4, because the US market had a dip for us about 4 years ago, and because of the negative discussion in Europe, we said we're going to focus more on the US this year. But what we've done is, we now have created incentive packages for the salespeople in the distributors, because even if you give a distributor more discount, that doesn't mean they're going to go out and sell more of your product or service. But what we done early on, we had a meeting in the US, and we said for every sales guy that sells 3 Combilifts in 2 months, we'll give a trip for them to Ireland for a week. And we had 35 people in from the US 2 weeks ago here. So they sold over 100 trucks, and our sales this year have doubled in the US compared to last year. And I think it's because incentivising the sales guys on the ground, not the owners in the company, not the margin. Okay, it's still a cost, but if that trip to here is going to cost us, for example, I don't know, €2,000 or whatever it's going to be. But if we discount 3 trucks by €1,000 each, we wouldn't get the same amount of business. The problem you'll find, a lot of the owners in the dealerships don't like that approach, because what we're really doing is we're dictating in the morning where that sales guy goes. Does he go and sell a Toyota forklift, or does he go and sell a Combilift? But the trip to Ireland meant he went and sold a Combilift. So it's always, I think the one thing you need to keep changing the incentive programs, because you can't have the same all the time. It's just coming up with different ways to motivate them.
That slide of your sales, there was a dip in
yeah.
Why was that?
Well, because we're in the forklift truck is a capital equipment, it's like a capital investment. With the global downturn, forklift, people, the first thing they cut is capital expenditure.
Right.
And forklift truck sales worldwide dropped more than 50%, not just in one country, but worldwide there was a drop of 50%. And we dropped, I think it ended up 28% of a drop. And even today, forklift truck sales worldwide, if you take 08 sales, even worldwide today, forklift truck sales would still be only about 3/4 of where they were in 08. So thankfully we have still grown out of that recession, but that's the negative. When you're in capital equipment, capital investment is the first thing to get hit. So for any in the service business, I wish I was in it. It doesn't get hit as hard as the capital equipment.
How do you balance up the cost of manufacture? You know, like, because I deal with other companies that manufacture those, or took out to China to make product, even though it's still an Irish product, or the badges is an Irish product. And how do you balance up that cost?
Well, what we're doing at the moment, and we don't necessarily publish it to our customers or dealers, but to try and get there's a lot of steel goes into a Combilift truck. You know, it's very heavy, counterweight. We're actually currently buying in quite a lot of our steel pre-cut in China. You know, it's just mild steel, flame, we call it profile cut, ready to go in. So we do all the fabrication, paint and assembly. The truck's still made here. So we're trying to do ways to cut our raw material cost. But we've started selling in China in the last 18 months, and the customers we've sold to in China want to buy Western products. They will pay 50% more for a Western product than they will for a Chinese product. So there's even, I often thought, well, if we start to sell in China, we're going to have to make in China to sell there. But the reality is the customers we're selling to, either the Western companies or the larger Chinese public companies, they want to buy Western products anyway. So there's no reason at this time for us to consider manufacturing in a cheaper. And the other, probably to answer your question, even on a Combilift truck, it's a forklift, but our labour content is still only about 10% of our selling price. You know, there's so much raw material goes in it. So even if our labour cost in Ireland is higher than in China or other countries, it's still, I don't mean only, but it's only 10%, it's not 50% of our product. So it means the reality, we should be fit to compete here for quite a lot of years to come anyway. And costs are going up in China and other markets too. So.
How are you coping with the volatility of the current sector over the last couple of years? Is it costing a nightmare?
It is. In fact, we used to buy or sell currency, you know, lock into certain dollar rates or sterling rates, but we stopped doing it because you always make mistakes when you buy currency forward. But the reality is, and I've said it before, is the more negative discussion in Europe and in Greece and other places, the weaker the euro helps Combilift's exports, because it means we're more competitive selling into the US or into Russia or into China. So the whole negative discussion in Europe is actually helping our business. I know it's not a nice thing to say, but it's actually helping European companies to export.
What should the dollars collapse on? If you know your pricing in dollars,
Yeah, but the dollar, what is it today?
125, 126.
No, but that's getting stronger. So the dollar's, when the dollar was 160, it was very weak. Because 120, you're buying. You're buying from outside. I'm selling. Yeah, it's more difficult for you to import. But for us exporting, it's working in our favour, so it's the opposite side, yeah. Yeah.
Martin, see the way there you said about, pleasing your customers. So you're obviously a customer to so many other small businesses and big businesses maybe buying in from China. And do you have like that expectation level for your suppliers? Do you enforce that? Like, do you employ like lean management or tools like that there to have the best product going into your product?
Well, in fact, because we've probably been, as a company, we're still a young, growing company. We've been so focused on growing, getting the product out the door. But it's only in the last few months we've made an application to Enterprise Ireland, and we've been approved funding to make our business more lean. So we're going to invest quite heavily in the next year or two on a whole lean process in-house. And that, of course, is going to mean we're going to be working a lot closer with our suppliers, that they become more lean as a supply base. Yeah. And you know what? In reality, I know it's not a nice thing to say, even though we're producing X amount of trucks, shipping them abroad, Combilift, we're still very much a reality, just a big garage, where we design products, we put them together. But if we visit other assembly plants around the world, we don't compare with them in any shape or form, so there's a lot more we need to do to think more as a lean assembly plant. And to be competitive, that's what we need to focus on as well.
One other question to Martin. Later on today there's a talk about the essential qualities of an entrepreneur. What would you think your essential qualities are?
You know what, I think the one thing that I probably see within myself is don't take no as an answer for anything. There's always a way of solving every problem. So if someone says it's not possible, you'll find a way around it. I think the other thing, particularly in terms of growing a business, particularly from an export side, you need to put the energy and the focus into it yourself. For example, I just arrived back from Denmark last night. I was in France and Denmark this week. And to grow export markets, don't expect local dealers to do it on their own. One of the gentlemen said, how do you motivate the dealers? You need to be out in front of them. You need to be with them. So even for me, I'm travelling at least a third of my time abroad. But I think the other thing, of course, is reality is, it's the essentials of an entrepreneur. There's a different essential of being an entrepreneur and managing a company. So it's hard, even from my side, even though I we want to grow the business, but managing it to become a more lean manufacturer is a different strategy. So being an entrepreneur, you need to keep changing how you...
what an entrepreneur is.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the last question. The
delivered price, big price make a big difference. Basic price and then shipping
a big difference. I would say if we were selling our product in Euro X factory, our sales wouldn't be half of what they are. You need to make it really easy getting that product to that customer.
Thank you very much, Martin.